Hello and welcome from a very rainy and muddy Lookout Mountain. As you can see, someone is very muddy. And so we're trying to clean up a little bit after a very messy night, but we live to tell about it, right? Well, okay, you've done your part. Go rest. It's been busy. Anyway, what we're going to do today is finish up with the 19th century. We done. We'll start with the 20th century after this, but the next thing is we have a test. Next week, I will go over the test review on Tuesday, and next Thursday, you can use the time to take the test. So that's the next thing. I also have set up one of those 1-question 5-point quizzes, which is optional. You can take it, you do well, you get 5 points. But if you miss the question, and it's an easy question based on last Tuesday's presentation, you miss it. And the question is, who invented the telephone? But as you can see, that's a much more complicated question than you might think. So think about that. Get it right, you get 5 points. Get it wrong, you lose 5 points, and you don't do it at all, you don't get any points. So that is this week's extra credit. And next week we do the test on the 19th century. The 19th century, the 1800s, really is where modern media began. We started with the high-speed printing press, the telegraph, the telephone. All of those things gave us more literacy, more diversity, different people, women, people of color, reading and writing, different cultures. Through the phonograph, we're listening to music from jazz music, international music, all sorts of things. We're not so isolated anymore. And the media is getting bigger after the Civil War. More people are reading, and modern media, you're starting to look like what we have today, including one of the earlier sex scandals. Give it a second to load. Grover Cleveland, that famous sex god. Come on, play. No, we don't want to have the ads. I had it queued up a second ago. Here it is. Can't escape those commercials. Give us a second for the first. Here he goes.
During after the American Civil War, people become more interested in the family lives of American presidents. And certainly one of the most notable examples of this happens in 1884, where
we can't see the screen.
The probability that Grover Cleveland fathered a child out of wedlock.
In 1873, Grover was a bachelor, and he was infatuated with a very attractive woman named Maria Halpin. Around Christmas of 1873, they happened to encounter each other on a street in Buffalo. They had a nice dinner, and Grover Cleveland was escorting her back to her boarding house. Maria later alleged Grover Cleveland sexually assaulted her. He attacked her, and against her will, they had sex. 6 weeks later, she realized that she was pregnant. Grover was flabbergasted, obviously.
Yes, the chant in the 1884 election, "Ma, ma, where's my pa? Gone to the White House, ha, ha, ha." So yes, some things never change.
Very upset. She demanded that he marry her. It got to the point where Cleveland, using his political influence his money, and his power in Buffalo, arranged to have Maria Halpin committed into an insane asylum. At the same time, he arranged to have his biological son sent to an orphanage.
Now, the truth of the matter was that Cleveland may not have been the father. Maria was apparently perhaps somewhat generous in distributing her affections. But Cleveland had been the only bachelor among them. And so he had done the right thing. He had claimed paternity so that nobody's marriage would be broken up. It says something about him that the last words on his deathbed would be, "I have tried so hard to do right." That's not saying I've done right. It's suggesting a sense that you failed, but you've tried.
So, yeah, you have sex scandals. And we know that happens all the time, including, speaking of New York or Buffalo, is the current governor's in a little trouble with those sorts of things. And it gets played up in the media because you have everybody reading the papers.
Welcome to Cool Talk and Grover Cleveland on my presidential series.
Okay, we just saw him.
Your screen isn't mirrored.
It has been written that the pen is mightier than the sword. Perhaps it's because the pen has the ability to summon the sword. Colonial newspapers filled with opinion pieces written by the likes of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine helped mobilize Americans for the Revolutionary War. The American media would rapidly evolve from these small localized chains to become a multi-million-dollar business equivalent to millions of pens. Through the newspapers the printing press turned out, the world got its first taste of mass media.
This is called the Yellow Kid. He was kind of like the Alfred E. Newman, if those of you who remember Mad Magazine of his day. It was just this silly guy saying silly things. And from him, we get the name yellow journalism, meaning journalism that is silly, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, that is not necessarily true.
For William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, mass media meant mass profit. The circulation war between these two men demonstrated that the media leads the nation for better or for worse. Pulitzer and Hearst would leave a legacy in blood and ink and show how war can be brought from print to presence. Joseph Pulitzer was born in Mako, Hungary on April 10, 1847. After gaining American citizenship in the Civil War, Pulitzer moved to Missouri, where he would take over the Vestal Post and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Pulitzer took the profits from these papers and, with the help of his brother Albert Pulitzer, purchased the New York World from railroad baron Jay Gould in 1883. The World quickly rose to prominence by securing the election of Grover Cleveland in 1884. New York was a swing state that would decide the election, and as Pulitzer biographer James Morris would write, electing Cleveland and boosting circulation were completely intertwined, the latter increasing the former. Pulitzer put his aggressive style of journalism on display through the political assassination of Republican candidate James Blaine. He explained his philosophy by writing, "The most valuable and successful paper will generally be that which has the most enemies." Pulitzer would use his vicious muckraking to make the World the most widely circulated newspaper in America. William Randolph Hearst was born on April 29, 1863, to U.S. Senator George Hearst. Pulitzer's success at the New York World inspired Hearst to drop out of college and take over the San Francisco Examiner from his father, giving it the title the Monarch of Dailies. Hearst quickly moved to acquire the greatest talents of his time, including Ambrose Bierce, Mark Twain, Jack London, and political cartoonist Homer Davenport. In 1895, Albert Pulitzer refused to sell the New York Morning Journal to his brother, instead opting to sell his paper to Hearst, who renamed it simply the New York Journal. The circulation war between Hearst and Pulitzer was ultimately a contest between competing philosophies.
Hearst believed in journalism of action. So he thought that the newspaper itself should bring about social change, social action in very concrete ways. Pulitzer sort of believed that too, but not the sort of inserting the newspaper into stories. Pulitzer's paper is doing some hardcore investigative work. So, his paper not only investigates that, but they make it into a crusade. they beat that story each and every day like a drum until there's change.
With that, the stage was set for the bitter birth of yellow journalism. When the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor on February 15th, 1888, both papers immediately jumped to treachery. For a week following the
Guess what? The battleship Maine was blew up in Havana Harbor. And of course, everybody said, oh gosh, those darn Hispanic people. They're just dastardly. They blew up our boat. We need to go to war. Guess what? What really happened in later investigations was you had a couple of sailors rolling their own on next to the gunpowder and the ship blew up. Still, so it was an accident. Spanish had nothing to do with it. But Hearst and Pulitzer didn't care. Truth, who cares? We need a good war to show that we're just as good as those British or Germans, those Europeans who are gaining an empire. Let's get an empire too.
The sinking, the journal dedicated an average of 8.5 pages to the sinking of the USS Maine. Hearst even went so far as to announce a $50,000 reward for information leading to the apprehension of the perpetrators of the bombing. While the world was not as outlandish as the journal, it too pointed the finger at Spain and had numerous articles alleging treachery on the part of the Spanish. All of this led the
All
American people to
false.
call to war with the motto of remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. 2 months later, President William McKinley convinced Congress to declare war. The wartime reporting proved to be just as sensational as the antebellum, creating one of the most famous myths in American history, the myth of the Rough Riders. Articles on the Battle of San Juan Hill depicted Roosevelt and his riders as heroes who helped take San Juan Hill, leading to many misconceptions. The Rough Riders were nicknamed Woods Weary Walkers because of their status as more of an infantry troop than a cavalry outfit. Roosevelt and the Rough Riders actually fought on Kettle Hill and suffered heavy casualties. In fact, it was the 24th and 25th Colored Infantry units who responded.
Yes, these are the people who fought the Spanish on San Juan Hill. Roosevelt did not ride a horse. He walked behind these guys, but he knew how to play the media and make it look good.
Responsible for the victory because their covering fire prevented the Rough Riders from being totally annihilated. Regardless of these facts, Roosevelt's Rough Riders were hailed as heroes, and the groundwork for Roosevelt's political career had been laid. While it is true that both papers exaggerated America's military dominance, the war truly was a crushing defeat to Spain. America's Navy, thanks to advanced technology, crushed the Spanish Armada in Cuba. At the Battle of Manila Bay, Commodore George Dewey's Asiatic Squadron completely annihilated the Spanish Pacific Squadron, ending the fight for the Philippines. Hearst's journalism in action ultimately bested Pulitzer's investigative method in wartime coverage. Hearst would break Cuban freedom fighter Evangelina Cisneros out of a Spanish prison camp, and even go so far as to make plans to personally fund a blockade of the Suez Canal. The journal boldly asked, how do you like the journal's war? And indeed, the journal had overtaken the world as America's most read newspaper. Unfortunately, a much bloodier war would soon dominate the headlines. On February 4th, 1899, fighting broke out in what would be known as the Second Battle of Manila. 15,000 Filipinos sought to take Manila from an American occupying force of 19,000. The outmanned, outgunned Filipinos lost the battle with heavy casualties. On June 7th, the First Philippine Republic declared war on the United States. It is at this point that most high school history textbooks quit talking about Hearst, Pulitzer, and yellow journalism. But this is a serious mistake. The Philippine-American War would not have occurred without the Spanish-American War that the world and the journal brought from print to presence. Yellow journalism did not stop. The World published an article on January 22, 1889, claiming that Private Lapierre, an American soldier, had been infected with leprosy by the Filipino forces. Historians believe this account is false, and that Lapierre the leper was a pun for a sensational headline.
See how they make the Filipinos look like some sort of stereotype? Dehumanizing your enemy is a very common propaganda tactic.
Torture was commonly employed by American soldiers. A Senate committee reported that in one instance, a method of torture known as the water cure killed 134 out of 160 natives it was administered to. Both papers depicted the Filipinos as savage, even animal-like in their racist artistic renderings while ignoring American atrocities. Thanks to the newspaper's blessings, Roosevelt became popular enough to become vice president. After William McKinley's death, Roosevelt used brute force to end the war, killing 220,000 Filipinos in the process. As the world and the journal praised Roosevelt, they were ultimately praising his militarism. Pulitzer and Hearst both made a killing off the killing overseas, setting a dangerous precedent for generations to come.
Yep. See, we took over Cuba. We already had Alaska. We took over Hawaii and the Philippines and Puerto Rico. These are all things we took in the Spanish-American War because we could.
Instead of peace being the default setting of American foreign policy, intervention became the norm. Citizen Kane, a film inspired by Hearst, explains this trend best.
You provide the prose poems, I'll provide the war.
And that is exactly what Hearst said. You provide the news, I'll provide the war. And he did.
In the case of World War II, Roosevelt's militarism may have inadvertently caused the war. The thesis that Roosevelt inspired Japanese imperialism is most famously argued by James Bradley in The Imperial Cruise, and asserts that Roosevelt sanctioned Japan's acquisition of Korea and advised the Japanese as Aryans of the East to seek empire. Roosevelt urged Japan to establish Monroe Doctrine-like policies, and even stated, "I should like to see Japan have Korea." The impact of this historic advice would not be felt until the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. For Joseph Pulitzer, his legacy remains mostly a positive one. Pulitzer restored his legacy as a journalist of integrity during the construction of the Panama Canal. The world alleged that the $40 million allocated to buy land from the French ended up being pocketed by the main lobbyists for the project, William Cromwell. Roosevelt decided to press libel charges against Pulitzer with the plan of imprisoning him. Instead of retracting the story, Pulitzer bravely defended free speech and a USB Press Publishing Company.
And of course, Pulitzer started the Pulitzer Prize.
The Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of the paper. Pulitzer also revolutionized philanthropy. The Statue of Liberty, one of America's national symbols, was built thanks to the world's nationwide fundraising campaign, the first crowdfunding campaign in history. Pulitzer also established the Pulitzer Prizes, which continue to reward the best and brightest of American writers and journalists. Hearst's legacy remains mixed, but he boasts a tremendous influence on American politics. He functioned as a political kingmaker, guaranteeing Roosevelt's election in 1932 in exchange for the selection of former Speaker of the House John Garner as vice president. An avowed anti-communist, Hearst directly led the political assassination of Upton Sinclair. His paper's shaming of communist academics became a leading cause of the first Red Scare. And despite being a prolific producer of 558 feature films, Hearst would actively call for government censorship and investigation of communism in Hollywood, playing a direct role in the rise of McCarthyism. Hearst did, however, have his redeeming qualities. He actively tried to protect Jews from the Nazi regime, despite initially supporting Adolf Hitler's rise to power. In their only meeting in 1934, Hitler claimed Jews faced no discrimination. Hearst responded, "I should think the industry should belong to every nationality," causing the Fuhrer to storm out in fury. After the infamous Kristallnacht in 1938, Hearst's papers became some of the only in America to openly criticize Nazi treatment of the Jews and demand America accept Jewish refugees. In many ways, yellow journalism is alive and well today. Hearst anticipated the influence television would have on the media, stating, "The coming of the motion picture was as important as that of the printing press." The scandals surrounding Brian Williams and Bill O'Reilly are examples of how the media hyped up a story to increase sales. Not only did they exaggerate stories, other news outlets then exaggerated their exaggerations. Regardless of their reporting, NBC and Fox News are biased news sources, telling people of their political affiliation what they want to hear. Dr. Matthew Genskow of the University of Chicago School of Economics conducted a study concluding that the media is like ice cream. News outlets tailor their stories to meet the tastes of specific groups to make more money. This trend of profit before professional integrity was perfected in the newsrooms of Hearst and Pulitzer. William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer.
Modern media. Give me the story, I'll give you the war. We have Teddy Roosevelt. Again, he comes back from the war. This is the picture you see. It's fake.
We can't see the video.
You couldn't see the video?
No.
Well, you can click on it yourself. I'm sorry, Ellie, could you hear it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I saw it on my screen. Sorry about that. Well, you can click on it. Well, you heard it at least. Anyway, that's weird. Anyway, at least you heard it. Teddy Roosevelt faked his walk up San Juan Hill and used those images to walk into the White House. And then you have stunts like Nellie Bly going around the world in 72 days in 1880, women writers. First photography. First photography in a newspaper. There are people living in slums. You start seeing documentary photography.
In October 1890, a curious volume went on sale in the bookstores of New York.
Could you see that one? Hello, can you see this video?
No, no.
Huh.
We just see you.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, you can click on it
Called How the Other Half
yourself.
Lives.
It's
It had been
about,
written by a 41-year-old
Okay,
Danish-born
stop.
police reporter named Jacob.
maybe it's a copyright thing, but you can click on it. The bottom line is that you start documenting how people live in slums, the work of kids, of and crusading journalism starts to change how people look at things and the political situation. So what eventually happens is journalism starts to change things. Then you have, the problem is journalism has a lot of power, and a lot of people are worried about the power of the media. And folks start thinking we need to do something about that power. And that thing is that thing is media ethics. And we'll start talking about that next time. If you're interested, you can click on the links yourself. I have the links posted, but it won't really be on the test. Anyway, you can't see it, we'll end it a little early. Anyway, any other questions? Sorry about that. That's rather odd. We've had the other ones that you've seen. Huh. I'm very sorry about that. I don't know why. Anyway, you can click on it and see it yourself. Beyond that, at least you heard the video. We will. Let's try this one more time, because this is a good one.
Reese. It would change
It's all about pictures.
forever the way
So
people.
you can't see it? Can you see this at all?
No, we can't.
No, we just see you.
Huh.
We haven't seen any of the videos.
Hey,
today.
you know what? Oh, shit. Oh, pardon my French. I didn't have the share screen. Duh. I am so sorry. Okay, we can do this now. I'm just running through this stuff.
People
so-
thought about the city.
Now you can see it, right?
Reese had come to New York in 1870
Now can
when
you
he
see
was
it?
just 21 with $40 in his
I
pocket.
bet you can.
Yes.
we can.
Yes.
That's
And he had
right.
learned firsthand what immigrant life could be like in the sprawling metropolis.
Got it now. That's
Homeless,
my
often hungry,
mistake.
and out of work. He had drifted
Space
into
shot
the
it on
crime-infested
the
world
screen.
of the 5 Point slum, dozing on the cold, filthy floors of police lodging houses. More than once, he considered killing himself. Eventually, he landed on his feet and managed to find work as a police reporter for the New York Tribune, and spent the next 10 years exploring the densely crowded slums of the Lower East Side. The sights, he later said, gripped my heart until I felt that I must tell of them or burst. Determined to show the world what he had seen, Reese began publishing magazine articles, but they seemed to make no impression, he wrote. He thought of taking pictures, but the tenements were too dark for the photographs to come out. Then, in 1887, a breakthrough came with the invention of a new photographic device, a magnesium flash powder that flooded even the deepest shadow with a brilliant flash of light. Armed with the new apparatus, Reese and his assistants plunged into the 5 Point.
Okay, here is how people lived in New York City. Documentary
Denizens of the
photography.
dives, tramps and bummers in their lodgings, have marveled at the phenomenon. What they saw was 3 or 4 figures in the gloom, a ghostly tripod, some weird and uncanny movements, the blinding flash, and then the patter of retreating footsteps, and the mysterious visitors were gone. The New York Sun, February 12th, 1888.
They would go into places, especially at night, with the brand new flash powder attachment and surprise people, sleepers in these kind of collective sleeping rooms or drinkers in these rot gut saloons.
So how people lived. And what that did, though.
Vast influx of new immigrant groups. So that whereas in 1860, it was essentially a city of small homes. By 1900, the most crowded neighborhoods in the world are in New York City, especially on the Lower East Side, but also in East Harlem. You have the rise of tenement housing. It's really worse than anything that was ever seen.
And so he documented that. And you start to have changes in laws. to
Up the
take
dark
care
stairs in one of those tenements.
of take care of poor people, health codes, all of that, which is good. But the downside of that kind of photography
And there I trod upon a baby.
is, and these are the same issues we have today. You pay
It is the
more
regular means
to
of
keep
introduction
people
in the world.
safer and the rents go up. How do you handle that balance? We're still working on that. All right, I will go back and I will quickly go through because it's my bad and I feel terrible about it. We will do the Hearst Pulitzer video. I am very sorry. I'll go back through it fairly quick.
Welcome to Cool Talk and Grover Cleveland.
Now we talked about Grover Cleveland. No,
Welcome.
why did that do that?
It has been written that the pen is mightier.
Okay. Here we have
William Randolph Hearst.
the Yellow Kid, which personified yellow journalism. He was a cartoon character saying, hey, it's all silly. It's not real, but we'll make fun.
And Joseph Pulitzer, mass media.
And what they did, there's Pulitzer and Hearst, you heard it. The big thing was, and you heard that,
The stage was set for the bitter birth of yellow journalism. When the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1888, both papers immediately jumped to treachery. For a week following the sinking, the journal dedicated an average of 8.5 pages to the sinking of the USS Maine. Hearst even went so far as to announce a 50,000.
So you see, and if, like I told you, it was not the Spanish, it was our own sailors who had an accident. So we went to war over it. And here's President McKinley going to war. And a war needs a hero.
Depicted Roosevelt and his riders as heroes who helped take San Juan Hill, leading to many misconceptions. The Rough Riders.
See, that's not the actual battle. That's him riding with his troops. He walked up San Juan Hill.
Were nicknamed Woods Weary Walkers because of their status as more of an infantry troop than a cavalry outfit. Roosevelt and the Rough Riders actually fought on Kettle Hill and suffered heavy casualties. In fact, it was the 24th and 25th Colored Infantry units who were.
These are the ones who did the fighting for him. He walked up, and yes, he got shot at, but he didn't ride a horse. These are the ones who provided cover and saved his fat.
Responsible for the victory because their covering fire prevented the Rough Riders from being totally annihilated. Regardless of these facts, Roosevelt's Rough Riders were hailed as heroes, and the groundwork.
Right, so he becomes president, and then you have the war in the Philippines, and see what they made the Filipinos look like to try to take over the Philippines, and he was all about it. And then Roosevelt backed the Japanese, saying, hey, you guys should get it on the act too. And of course, 30 years later, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor.
Explains this trend best.
You provide the prose poems, I'll provide the war.
See, that's Hearst. You provide the You provide the news, I will provide the war. So, and they did. And here's Teddy Roosevelt again. This is a lie. He did not charge up San Juan Hill, he walked. But you see pictures like that in the paper, gosh darn, he should be president. So these are the things that started to happen. And then we get to the 20th century and folks are start thinking, this media stuff's a big deal. Maybe we should do something about it. Okay. So anyway, I'm caught up. I am sorry, I forgot the share screen. It is my bad. I made a mistake. It does happen. If you have any questions, please catch up. I think at least I got it covered. Anyway, any other questions about what we do? We have an extra credit question and we'll go over the test next time. Is that all right? Okay, sorry about the mess up. Stuff is at least covered. I will talk to you next time. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
All right, thank you.